Okay, it's 10 o'clock Seattle time. And first we'll cover the Mandolin Improvisation series, which when I first started doing it, I called it Improv from Scratch. So if anybody has any questions on that, go ahead and type them into the box and I'll answer them. If you don't have any questions here in a couple minutes, we'll just get started on learning a line. So I'll give everybody a chance to get on and me to have a little more coffee to wake up. In the meantime, I'll talk a little bit about this mandolin. This is a 1980 Gilchrist. I don't know if he called it a Model 5 at that time or a Model F5. I don't really have quite enough light to see the label. I can look into it here. No, it's just called F5 at this time. And I've had this for at least 20 years. I went looking for an early 80s or late 70s Gilchrist when I went looking for one because they sounded so much to me like the Gibson Ferns that were right after the Lowers, which I always really liked those mandolins. So these sound really, really close to those. And the headstock was broken off by the original Carlton case, the Carlton Canada case. The Carlton cases now are just fine. If you do happen to get a used one, make sure that you put your mandolin in and check where the rivet on the side hinge comes, if it's an old one, because that side hinge was right up against this, and I picked it up. You know, it was sitting on its side with the handle up, and I picked it up and I dropped it about this far, and it just snapped this right off. There's a long story that goes with this that I will not go into today. Okay, so doesn't look like, so like I said, if you have any questions on the Mandolin Improvisation series, also known as Improv from Scratch, go ahead and write them in the comment box and I'll cover those first. Okay, give it another minute or so, and if there's no questions, then I'll go right into a line. So that's the line we're going to cover today. So I don't know if I've covered this yet. I think I did, but you'll have to forgive me. I've done enough of these videos and enough of the Barry Harris style improvisation videos for the jazz stuff that I don't always remember what I've covered and what I haven't. Okay. So most of the time, what we want to do is put a note of the chord on the beat, and that's what the chord tone scales do. So there's chord tone scales for major, for major chords, for minor chords, and for dominant seventh chords. Dominant seventh for you non-jazzers, it just means a seventh chord. Jazz players, there's several types of seven chords, but if you don't play jazz, you never run into them. So just a seventh chord, you know, G7, which resolves to C. Okay, that's what I mean by a seventh chord. Okay, so so we're gonna play against a G chord now. Of course, you can do this in any key and and transpose this line to something else. But one of the things I noticed in the players I like, so how I learned how to do this improvisation stuff is I just copied solos. I just copied solos from the players I like the best, and the player I liked the absolute best was Sam Bush. And at one point, I had copied over 600. I'd copied and learned over 600 of his mandolin and fiddle solos. So when you do that much of one person, you really do get to know how they think and pretty much everything that they know as far as improvising goes. I did have a lot of other heroes. The great Texan fiddler Benny Thomason was a big hero of mine. So when I played a lot of Texas style fiddle, I tried to play as much like him as I could. Kenny Baker was a big influence. Just a number of players whose melodic styles I really liked. So I would copy them and learn a bunch of stuff from them. So one of the things I found is, okay, one quick step backwards here. A major chord contains the 1-3-5 note of the scale. Okay, if you don't know what I mean, you need to go through that music. You need to go through some of the music theory videos that I've made and learn this number system because it's pretty important. 1-3-5 are the notes of the major chord, so that's what we're going to put on the beat most of the time, and that's what the chord tone scale does. But one of the things I also found is every once in a while, my favorite players would put a 6 note on the beat. So an E note, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that's an E. If I start on open G and count, counting G is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, E is 6. So at least often enough to take notice of it, they would put a 6 on the beat. All right. Let me make sure I've turned that off. Yep, I have. So in that 6 on the beat, let's take that and start with that and then run up the G major scale to A. Okay, 1 and 2 and. Okay, so that puts the E on the beat and the G on the beat, which has enough of the G sound to work just fine. Okay, now here we're going to go into what I call thirds. So thirds are going up or down a scale 3 notes. So if I started on open G and went up 3 notes, that would be to the B note or the 4th fret. Okay, you can go up or down in patterns like this. And there's some of the early videos in the series cover that kind of stuff. Okay, well, you can, in addition to going up like we were just going, you can also go down. And you hear these little phrases all the time in players' solos. Okay, so when we get to the A note, now we're going to go down in thirds. So we're gonna go from the A to the F sharp, or the 5th fret on E to the 2nd fret. Then the next one in that pattern will be the 3rd fret and the open E. So scale up from open E to A. Now the thirds. Now we're just going to go from open E up the scale to G. So, 1, 2, 3. Okay, I hear this kind of phrase all the time in soloing. So let's try that again. 1, 2, 3. Okay. So take a minute or two and do that. Do that on your own. Okay, I'll go through that one more time. Starting on open E, play the G major scale up to A. Now down in thirds to open E, then the scale up to G. So you do it. Okay, now that we've reached this open G, or this G, not open G, now that we've reached the G, the third fret on the E string, let's now go down the chord tone scale. Remember, when we descend the major chord tone scale, so we're playing the G major chord tone scale, we're going to skip the F sharp note, or the second fret on the E string. So we'll go from the third fret to open, or G to E. Now, just on the A string, 5, 3, 2, open, and then down to the fifth fret of D. So you do that a couple of times on your own. Okay, good. So now let me play from the beginning and add this second phrase on. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that would work as a phrase just like itself. Okay, once again, starting on open E, going up the scale, the G major scale to A, down in thirds, on open E, major scale up to G. Now, once we reach G, down the G major chord tone scale to the next G an octave lower. Okay. Okay. You hear this kind of thing all the time. Okay, so try that a couple of times on your own. Okay, I see we've had a couple other people join, a few more people join since the beginning. This is the Mandolin Improvisation series up until the bottom of the hour. What I originally called Improv from Scratch. So this is non-jazz stuff. The Barry Harris for jazz stuff will start at the bottom of the hour. And we're looking about doing a phrase against a G major chord. So I'll review what we've done so far. We've started on open E and played the G major scale up to the A note, the 5th fret of the A string. And then we have what is called thirds. You go down a third in the scale. So a third in the scale is 3 notes. So we're on the A note as the last note we played. We go down 3 notes in the scale, 1, 2, 3, that's the F sharp note or the 2nd fret. And then you can do it again by playing G to E. That's that kind of pattern. And once again, you hear that all the time in things. So now once you get to open E, 3 notes up to the G major scale, up the G major scale, I'm sorry. Now that we're on G, we're going to go down the G chord tone scale, the G major chord tone scale, until we reach the G note on the E string, or on the D string. So here's the line. Okay, so continuing on. Very common bluesy phrase from the G note in the key of G is to play G, then open D. So that's an arpeggio. That's 2 notes of the G major chord. Now, we're just going to start on the 3rd fret, the F natural. That's the flatted 7 in the key of G. And that has that bluesy sound. So it's a very nice change of pace. So we're going to start on the flatted 7 and then play down the rest of the G major scale when we get to E. To the note C. Okay. Sounds a little odd to stop here, but we'll continue the rest of the line. There's just a few more notes to go. So G to D, so 5th fret on D to open D. Then F, E, D, so that's 3 to open, to the 5th fret on G. Okay. So here, at the 5th fret on G, we're going to do what jazz players call a surround. Okay. I hear this in good bluegrass players too. One of the strongest ways of arriving at one note, and composers have been doing this, boy, for eons and eons. One of the strongest ways of arriving at one note is you play a note in the scale above it, a note in the scale below it, and then arrive at your target note. Our target note is going to be the B note, the 4th fret on the G string, and in front of that, we're going to put the C, the 5th fret, and the A, the 2nd fret. And then followed by open G. So, okay. Now, if I go back to the G note, the 5th fret, that was the beginning of this whole last phrase, I could have played straight down the scale. Way more often, the players I liked the most when I was learning would do it this other way with the surround. Straight scale. Now with the surround. You hear the second way makes more musical sense. At least it does to me. Okay, so let's play that again. Ready, go. One more time. Ready, go. Okay. So let me put this whole thing together from the beginning. 2, 3. Okay. One more time, I'll play it slow. Play it along with me if you want. 1, 2, go. Okay. Oh, by the way, if you want some tablature of this, just go to my website, petemartin.info, and email me. Go to the contact page and email me and give me your email address, and I'll send you the chart of that, the PDF file, the music notation, and the tab. Oops. So there it is right there. And also I do teach individual in-person and online lessons. If anybody is interested, you can contact me that way as well. Okay. Let's go through this whole thing one more time. Okay. From the beginning, we're starting on open E, because once again, the 6th note, which is E in the key of G major, the 6th note is used once in a great while, kind of like a note of the chord is, so it'll be played on the beat, and it's got a close enough to G sound. If I play a G chord, just a 2-finger G chord, and then add the 2nd fret to it, the E note, the 2nd fret on the D string, those sound extremely close to each other. And it turns out all that is an E minor chord. Those two, the G major chord and the E minor chord, 2 of the 3 notes are the same. It's just the D, the 5th on G, turns into E, the root, on E minor. But because they have such a similar sound, you can occasionally use that E almost like you'd use a chord note in soloing, a chord tone. Okay, so we're going to start on open E and go up the G major scale to A. Then down thirds. On reaching open E, up the scale to G major. Then down the chord tone scale to G an octave below. Jump down to open D. Then we're going to descend using an F natural instead of an F sharp, but descend the rest of the notes of the G major scale from F down to C. Then do this surround, C, A, surrounding into B, and then open G. So scale, thirds, scale, chord tone scale, blues phrase, surround. Okay. Nice line. Okay. I've covered all of these things at some point in the improvisation series. Sorry, I don't know the numbers of the videos. I've just done too many of them and too many of the Barry Harrises to keep track of exactly which numbers are there. All right. So if anybody has any questions on the Mandolin improvisation series, the non-jazz stuff, let me know right now. The Barry Harris jazz stuff will start at the bottom of the hour. Okay. If not, why don't you just go ahead and practice this a little bit on your own. But if there are any questions, well, thanks, Joe. That is a nice run. Yeah. And here's something. The first little bit of it that ends on the G note on the D string, That could be the first of an Arkansas Traveler like tag for a fiddle tune. Or it could be the second half. So the first half. Okay, there'd be an ending. Okay, you could play the Arkansas Traveler thing first and then play that. See? Okay. So one of the things that I like to do whenever I hear anything or learn anything is I like to break it down into really small phrases and say, where could I use this? That. You could use that as a fill in between singing phrases. Let me think. Let's see. 9-pound hammer is a little too heavy for my size. Well, for my size. Roll on, buddy. Yeah, sorry, I got it out of time a little bit there. It's always kind of tough splitting your thinking up between singing and doing runs. For my size, well, for my size. Roll on, buddy. Yeah, I came in a little late with Roll on, buddy there. But anyway, you see what I mean, okay? So that's, or that's a really good little fill phrase. For my side, well, for my side, roll on, buddy. See what I mean? Okay. So you can use these in any number of places, or you can put them together and use them for a solo. Okay. Is sorry, I just don't play that much bluegrass anymore, so I kind of got a little tongue-tied there. Let me start at that second half of. So you can't play this whole thing because the G chord doesn't in 9-pound hammer doesn't last long enough. 1, 2, 3. There we go. Okay, that would have worked. All right. So anyway, plenty of opportunity to get to use this phrase. So let's play it slow a couple more times. 1. So it starts on beat number 4. 1, 2, go. Okay. 1, 2, go. One, 2, go. Okay. Like I said, if you want the music and the tablature to this, www.petemartin.info. I put that in the comments section, and just email me. Go to the contact place and let me know. Also, on my website under the recordings link, I have a bunch of free recordings. I've done, I think, 4 records now. My latest one is called Hicks with Licks, and it's Western Swing, which I just love playing. And actually, I'm starting to be a Western Swing steel guitar player. Right now, I'm the world's worst steel guitar player, but it is huge fun, and I'm learning how to do that. All right, so we'll get to the Barry Harris thing in a minute. All right, that was just a few little things from the Barry Harris Six Diminished stuff, Six Diminished chord things he teaches. Okay, so this is for the from here till the top of the hour, we'll be covering the Barry Harris for Jazz Mandolin series. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and type those out, and we'll answer. I can answer those first. Okay. So yeah, I just encourage, if anybody has any kind of questions on the Barry Harris stuff, let me know. Okay. I will say one thing about Barry Harris that can really be very confusing. I think I've said this before on several videos, but Barry uses terms different than traditional college music theory. And you have to understand that. When he was learning to play, actually, when he was a teenager, he was already such a good player in Detroit. He was definitely one of the top piano players in Detroit. A couple of things would happen. One is the touring players that would be coming through town and looking for a local rhythm section, they would hire Barry's trio because they liked Barry and they liked his trio so much to accompany the name players. And Barry did have a bunch of people come to him for lessons. So when he started working this out, I have a feeling, he never said this, but I kind of have a feeling that he probably had to make up terms to these things he saw so that he could communicate them. Okay. But since especially Berkeley style standardized university jazz teaching had not come along, because this was in the 30s when Barry was doing this, the 30s and the early 40s, when Barry started teaching, those colleges had not been established yet, so there was no real standardized way of teaching jazz theory. And so Barry made up these terms that quite often are the same word from what we now consider normal jazz music theory, but they could mean something very different. And for a couple of years, I got really confused, almost to the point where I stopped learning his system because I didn't know that. The reason that I kept after it was I saw so many really great players come out of Barry's system that I just thought, there's got to be something here that I'm not realizing. And one of the biggest things was I didn't know how he was using the terms that were different than traditional jazz music theory. Okay, so once I got that and started to understand what sounds he meant by the terms he was saying, then things started to click for me. Okay, as well as just having spent enough time around his system to start getting this stuff in my hands. So that's just one of the things I wanted to mention to anybody who has studied some music theory, either on their own or maybe through college level classes or something like that. The terms are different, and you have to learn what sound Barry means by each of his terms. Okay, and I really try to make sure I explain as much of that as possible. You can get that from any number of sources. Chris Parks' Things I Learned from Barry Harris is a real good source. Shaz, there's an English piano teacher that teaches a number of Barry Harris things. Shaz, or yeah, it's not sham, but it's a word that's real close to sham. That's his first name. Um, I'll make sure I get that next time and give him proper due. But there's some really good stuff on his channel as well. Uh, okay, so the very thing that we're going to look at today is Barry has what he calls extra half steps. Okay, so if I was in the key of G major and I was playing a descending scale, you can do this ascending, but boy, if you listen to jazz very much, you hear that much more often they play scales descending than they play them ascending, and especially with this extra half step stuff. So one of Barry's things was if you're playing against a major chord, so we'll say we're playing against either G major 7 or G6, and you descend, you can add one extra half step between 6 and 7, or between 6 and 5. So if I start on G and descend, right there, that E flat is an extra half step. And by doing that, look what happens. Here's what happens on the beat. G, E, which is the 6th of the chord, D, which is the 5, B, which is the 3, and G, which is the 1. The chord tones of a major chord of a 6th chord are on the beat. Okay, there's one extra one that Barry uses. There's another thing that Barry saw in, especially the playing of Charlie Parker, and then a lot of other bebop players as well took this from Parker. It is when playing a major scale, you can add 3 extra half steps. So one is between 6 and 5, which we just did. Another one is between 3 and 2, or between B and A, so add the B flat. And then the other one is between 2 and 1, and 2 is A and 1 is G, so the A flat note. So that would be. Now this puts on the beat G, E, D, B, A, and G. So the A is the 9. The 9 is the next common extension from a major 7. So that works very nicely. So if I have a major 9 chord or a 6/9 chord, that works for G. It has the same function. It acts as a major chord. All right. So, but there's one other thing that he does, that Parker does, that I've transcribed and seen Parker do several times that Barry never talked about. And that is if you're starting your descending note from the 7 on a major chord, you can play 4 extra half steps. And these are between 7 and 6, 6 and 5. Okay, I'm in the key of B flat now. Sorry, I don't know if I mentioned, but I did just change keys. Okay, so what this does is it's really cool because now it puts on the beat 7, 6, 5, and then if I continue on, 3, 2, or 9, and 1. Okay, 1, 3, 1, 9, 3, 5, 6, and 7. Those are like every major sounding note you can get. Okay, so that's actually really cool. So, a couple other things. One of Charlie Parker's very most common phrases was what Barry calls a chord, which is an ascending 4 note, or ascending or descending, we'll play it ascending here, an ascending 4 note phrase that is every other note of the scale. So if I start on B flat, and I play every other note of the B flat scale for a total of 4 notes, I get B flat, or the first fret, D, fifth fret, F, first fret on E, and A, the fifth fret on E. Okay. But when Parker would do this far and away more often, and this is a very cliche bebop sound, you'll hear it as soon as I play it, he would start a half step below that, but instead of playing the 4-note chord as eighth notes, he would play triplet eighth notes on the first three. I mean, that is just such a jazz cliche phrase. Every jazz player, every good jazz player now uses this phrase all the time. It's amazing, even though, you know, there's been a lot of change in jazz since the bebop era. Most players still use the bebop era as their main improvising language. And then they embellish from that and add stuff to it. But you hear this in every kind of jazz solo. All right, so I'm starting here. So how I play this mandolin wise, how I play this is I start up, because 1, 2, 3, da 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 da. We're starting on the offbeat, so you want to start on an upstroke. I play up on open A, down on 1, hammer to 3, up on the 5, the F, and then down on the A note. So up, down, hammer, up, down, and then start alternating from right there. So now if we play adding the extra half steps, because right now we're on an A note, the 7 of the B flat major scale, if I would play descending, adding the extra half step between 7 and 6, there's that phrase. Okay, if anybody saw the thing that I posted on, and I think I posted a little bit of this on the Patreon page, and I posted this as well, I think on YouTube. But this is how that, except moved over to E flat, this is how Charlie Parker starts his solo to Groovin' High. Sorry, I don't remember it. I haven't played it for a while, so I don't have it in memory. But it's this. It's that. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to continue down the scale, the B flat major scale, and then we're going to do Barry's. So right now we're on the E flat, which is the 4 of the B flat major scale. We could do Barry's 4-3 phrase. So 4, or really 4, starts one note before that. Okay, so in the video I did on Barry's 5-4-3-2, definitely go through here, because these are just hugely usable lines that you hear everybody play. And then 3 was simply a pivot. And for those of you that don't know what pivot is, if I would start on 3 and go up a chord, it would be that. But pivoting is I play the first note in its place, and then for the rest of the ascending chord, instead of the last 3, I drop an octave lower. Can you hear that? That's exactly the same. And this is a thing that Parker would do all the time. So Okay. And then there's just two more notes in this phrase, 1 and 6. And this whole idea, so this is da da, we end on the offbeat. That's a very, very common bebop cliche rhythm. A very high percentage of the time, bebop players end da da a phrase on the beat and offbeat, and this 1 and 6 are extremely common. So this turns this into nice line. Okay, so this is a classic Charlie Parker, which is who invented the bebop language. And I mean, Barry's system is far and away the best I've ever seen at describing what is going on and then show you how to practice it. Okay, so let's go through this again. Starting on open A on the upstroke, we're going to do a half step into an ascending chord starting on B flat of the B flat major scale. Now remember, the ascending chord is every other note for a total of 4. Then when we reach this A, we're going to descend chromatically the 2 extra half steps added to the B flat major scale to F. Then when we get to F, this is the 4 phrase, followed by the 3 phrase or a pivot, and then just 1 6. Okay, so let's try that. 1 2 go. No, wait, I'm sorry. It starts on the and beat of 1. 3 4 1. 3 4 1. Three, 4 1. Okay, so take a couple minutes on your own and see if you can play this. And like I said, if you have any questions, go ahead and write them in the chat. Okay. I had to show everybody this. I got this at the Musical Instrument Museum in Phoenix. Seeing how it's always so dreary and rainy and gray in Seattle in the winter, my wife and I went to Tucson for a couple of weeks and got some sun. And we'd heard so much from people about how cool the Musical Instrument Museum was in Phoenix that we drove up and spent a day up there. And it was fabulous. I highly recommend it to anybody who's anywhere near that area to spend a day. And I've known people that have spent 2 days there. It's just wonderful. So there's stuff from just all over the world. And I thought I'd be kind of bored because I've seen just a ton of musical instruments in my lifetime. There was so much stuff I'd never seen before that was just fascinating. And they have sound displays. You know, they give you headphones, and whenever you walk in front of something, that's what will come through the headphones. So you get to hear all these things from all over. And especially all the African instrument displays were just absolutely fascinating. It's amazing how they made do with so little, but they still made music with it. Yeah, that just shows you, you know, that we love music, and we'll figure out some kind of way of playing it. All right. So once again, I'll go through this. Half step from open A to B flat into a 4-note chord with a triplet figure. Descend using 2 extra half steps into Barry's 4 and into 3, and then just 1/6. Okay. Surely somebody has to have a question. I mean, you know. Anybody? This is your chance. Okay. See how haven't heard anything yet. So one of the things about learning bebop, about learning this era of jazz on a not typical jazz instrument, first of all, it doesn't matter which instrument you play. It's can you learn the style and learn the language. And Barry's method is far and away the best I've seen about teaching that. So that's why I really like it, and that's why I study it. It's also so in depth that you'll never get through all of it at all. I know I won't make it through by the end of my lifetime. I'll sure give it a go, but I'm not gonna get all the way through it. But there's just so much in there. But yet it's amazing how with just a little bit of knowledge, you can still make very jazzy sounds. Okay, this thing right here, one of the things I noticed when I started listening to Parker and then started transcribing some of the stuff and learning from him is he's playing this 4-note phrase going up in wider intervals to where he's going from low to high much quicker, and then he's playing down using a number of chromatic phrases. Okay, one of the real differences in bebop to the jazz that was before bebop was the much more use of chromatic phrases in bebop. So this whole idea of studying these extra half steps, and like I said, there's videos on major on that I've made in the Barry Harris things, actually fairly early, probably within the first 15 videos of the extra half steps for major, extra half steps for dominant 7, and extra half steps for minor. Okay, I think it's really essential to learn those, because even if you only got those, you'd have some pretty good tools to make more jazz-like lines with, even if that's all the farther you got in Barry's system. Okay. Now, if you wanted to go farther and learn some of the basic things, the chords. the 4-note chords. Okay, so Parker would play these at anything in the scale. So one of the really valuable things to practice in Barry's system is starting at the lowest note you can play in a key, and I'll do that in first position, but you can do this in any position on the fingerboard. Okay, so those are all the ascending chords in first position in the key of B flat. And you should practice them going down too. Okay, because Parker used them going down. Okay, here's I got that straight out of one of his solos. I can't remember which one, but that's, that's very common. All right. So if you'd employ the chord and the 4-note chord idea and the extra half steps, we have this run already. See, I could not do 4 and 3. That's still a fine run, right? Okay, so that's just what I showed you earlier, but instead of putting in 4 and 3, I just kept going down the scale until I hit B flat, and then ending on those two. Nope, sorry. There. Okay. I could do the chord from a different place. Okay. Where did I do that from? Nope. So I could do the chord without a triplet. Then descend with 3 extra half steps. Now here, I picked up that line from pianist Wynton Kelly. That's one of his favorite lines. So this I Dig of You solo that I transcribed and is on my transcriptions page. Well, that's another thing. I've put a lot of transcriptions on my website on the transcriptions page. You should go take a look at those. The This I Dig of You Wynton Kelly piano solo is just absolutely wonderful, and he does that 3 or 4 times in that solo, and I've heard him use that line a ton. Wynton's one of my very favorite players. I study him quite a bit. So, this stuff, you don't have to learn a huge amount of it and just a couple of things, but get fluid at them, and all of a sudden you just sound so much more like a jazz player. So just take little bits of things that you like and then really mess around with a lot. Now learn it in a bunch of keys if you can, because eventually you do have to be able to play in pretty much any key as a jazz player, and especially the heavy duty flat keys, E flat, A flat, D flat, and G flat. That's just part of it. When you play horn music, you've got to play in the keys the horns play in. Okay. They don't like the sharp keys. We don't like the flat keys, but if you do enough work, they actually get easy. Okay. The next 2 Barry videos that I do on YouTube will be how to get comfortable in a key that you're not comfortable in. And I use the key of A flat as the key that I'm demonstrating all these. But what it is it's all of what Barry Harris calls the basics. you know, the the scales, the triads, the chords, the and all of those with extra half steps, and practice all of them in as many different ways as you can. 5, 4, 3, 2. I think I said the extra half steps, right? And there's a bunch more of them. But one of the things I like to do every day when I pick up the mandolin is I take a key and I go through all those basic things. It takes me about 15 minutes to go through because I've been doing it long enough now. I can play through them pretty quickly. But it's so valuable because, boy, it really reinforces to me where everything is. Okay. Well, that's the we're out of time for this live stream. Hope you got some stuff from it, and you know, thanks y'all, and I'll see you next month for the live stream, and I'll be doing a bunch more videos before then. So take care.